Thanks everybody for joining us on the Page One podcast. I'm your host, Luke Peters, CEO of New Era Appliances, and really appreciate y'all joining today. It's been a little bit of a gap. I'm kind of just doing these podcasts as they come up and trying to really stay within our industry, housewares, large products for the home, kitchen, small products as well, and all the industry experts. So today we got a really exciting one with Paul Adamson, and we're going to be talking about remanufactured goods, returns, how to work in your supply chain. Before we do that though, let's just a quick shout out to a cause that I am supporting and starting actually. It's called Vetcations. So you can see it at vetcation.org. And basically what we do is we help veterans get a free vacation, really a dream vacation for veterans. The challenge, we need more vacation owners to step up. If you own an extra vacation home, you want to help out some veterans and families and give them a really memorable, beautiful stay in your home, go to vetcation.org and please sign up. We're looking for more homes. We've got plenty of veteran families to help out with the cause. Okay, great. And so in this episode of the Page One podcast, you're going to learn from Paul Adamson, CRO of America's Remanufacturing Company, also known as ARC. And we're going to talk returns. We'll talk supply chain, and if remanufacturing your products is right for your company. And, you know, think about those times when you're cutting a cord or you're deciding, hey, do I fix this? Do I cut a cord? What does it mean on the other end for sales when we have remanufactured goods? Who do you sell them to? What type of data can you collect? By the way, that's often not thought about before you kind of get involved with a company like ARC and all the data collection you're doing and how that helps reduce returns in the future. So we're going to get into all those subjects today. So Paul, want to welcome you to the Page One podcast. If you could please share a quick bio about yourself.
Hey, thanks, Luke. I appreciate you letting me get joined today. Basically, my background goes back about 29 years now in this reverse space. So as my wife will tell you, I don't know how to buy anything new off the shelf anymore because at the end of the day, I figure somebody out there is refurbing it, remanufacturing it, and I want to find them. So really, I'm just an advocate for the space overall. I'm a partner in the business for ARC, been involved for about 4 years now. And I'm also a board member for the Remanufacturing Industries Council, which is the voice of all things related to reman globally. So just at this point in my DNA. So I'm really excited to talk about this today. I'll try not to go off on too many tangents and be respectful of everybody's time.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. And this is all about logistics as well and data collection, like I talked about. So we're going to go through some questions. Why don't we just start with, tell us about ARC. You know, what do you guys do? How do you help companies? Maybe give some specs around the size of the company, just so people can kind of, have a picture in their mind of who ARC is.
Sure. So I was going to put it simply, ARC is a diverse group of individuals that are passionate about reverse logistics and returns management. Now, we're pretty much obsessively compelled to create value. And even though we're about to turn 20 years that we've spent in this return space, we really value that Bezos day one philosophy about being, constantly curious, nimble, and experimental. Because at the end of the day, we recognize the need to adapt quickly in order to serve our clients best. So, if you think about us coming up on 20 years, we operate about nearly 1 million square feet of production space, mostly focused in the Southeast U.S. and Georgia. But we're the partner that brings order to chaos because returns are messy. So we create programs for our clients that align with their corporate goals, which is typically a mix of process velocity, data that provides insights and allows for good analytical discussions, ways to convert returns into new value for them, and then supporting their corporate stewardship goals. Everybody, the consumers today are very focused on that. So really, maybe I can make it a little more concrete for your listeners. So, ARC, we partner with the leading brands and retailers, and we act as that consolidated return point for consumer products. And where we tend to play is small kitchen appliance, so home comfort. So think air conditioners and dehumidifiers and air purifiers. We do a bunch in the compact refrigeration space. And then we also do things like microwaves and handheld outdoor power equipment. So, pretty diverse set of products that you'd find in any big box retailer. And so our docks accept truckloads of returns from, the retailer warehouses, as well as packages that are coming straight from end consumers that are shipped in UPS or FedEx or even USPS. And then we receive those, we process them, we resell them, and then anything that falls out, we recycle it. But we're really focused on, helping our clients optimize those returns. So, we're testing and repairing and refurbishing and remanufacturing so that our clients can better understand why their products were returned. Right? That's the goal. We have to answer those important questions. Does the product have a quality issue? Does our client need to, better communicate with their consumers on either the use of the product, the benefits of the product, or even in some cases, just the maintenance of the product. You see a lot in that in outdoor power equipment and home comfort goods that, the consumer needs to maintain that product in order to use it.
Yeah.
And then also, how do they maybe push back on the retailers and help them reduce returns earlier in the process? So we just like to look at it as how do we help our clients along that returns maturity curve.
Got it. And I'm going to come back to that example of the microwave. So we went through some of these categories and we'll talk about that in the next question. But before I get there, so you guys got about 1 million square feet. How many different warehouses? How many people?
Sure. So we are spread across 5 facilities, one of those being our own recycling center. So we're a little unique. We're vertically integrated, meaning the product comes to us, it's only going back out as a finished good or as a recycled commodity that can go on to a downstream processor. So we're about 260 or so staff members across those facilities.
Great. And how's the labor situation lately, by the way? I know everybody's having, especially skilled labor, people repairing the products. Is that harder to find, or is it are you pretty fortunate to be in Georgia? Is there a good pool there?
So we find that we are able to tap into a pretty good pool of candidates. We also segment our processes into, I'd call them bite-sized chunks. So each operator in the process is really focused on one operation in that refurb or remanufacturing process. So it allows them to become, able to become expert in that area they're working on, but also change over quickly to other products that may run down their processing line. In addition, we do tap into some unique programs. One of our core values is related to the fact that we judge impartially. We are unbiased. We don't prejudge. We believe in the individual, which means we access some work programs that other companies may not engage with. But we found great success by, essentially remanufacturing product and remanufacturing people.
Oh, that's cool. That's awesome. And so what I wanted to get into, and I know, just coming from my mind, financial point of view, when you're looking at reverse logistics, and actually we're even looking at that right now at New Air, is, hey, it's some products it's not making sense. We're trying to find out what that price point is. Shipping costs have gone up. So in other words, customers got a product, maybe your cost into that's $100. Now all of a sudden you got to spend, $30 to ship it back to the reman facility, and then cost to repair it, and then you got to sell it. And what can you actually sell it at? And so there's a certain point where it probably doesn't make sense. And then there's obviously with the larger appliances, it makes a lot of sense. So are other brands thinking the same way? Because you talk about microwaves. Well, a lot of microwaves are, $100 on the shelf. That means the COG is a lot cheaper than that. Yet if those are coming back to you guys, with the shipping and everything involved, it's hard to see where that's profitable. Walk us through, the different ways of thinking about that problem.
Sure. And typically any program that we're engaging with one of our clients on, the first and most important question is, what is the goal of that program? And it really differs because we service both the brand owners, or what people may call the manufacturer, and the retailer, really depending on who owns that return at the point that the consumer sends it back. Yeah, and you're right though. Not every unit should be should be repaired, but all those returns offer insight into the design, the packaging, the functionality, and that consumer experience for that product. So, where we can match the voice of the customer data with an individual return, we can really create a holistic view of that customer's return journey. So, yes, it doesn't always make financial sense, but there are other reasons to pull in returns specifically. And one of those is, I talked about ARC being a consolidated returns point, meaning, that sometimes the brand owners don't have a choice. It's either accept all returns or no returns. So there are products that will flow into our facility that make no financial sense to renew, period, right? Because they're just too low cost, or they've exited production in the sales cycle, so they're not going to bother with a new sales channel. So we still receive those in. We can get some good data to help with crediting, maybe harvest some parts that apply to other units, but then they'll flow over to our recycling center to be properly recycled and turn into commodities again. But again, a decision has to be made on every product received by ARC. So we're looking at things like the received condition of the product. Is it still new in the box? Has it obviously been opened? Is it out of box? Is it damaged? Was it returned with the accessories? What was the reported customer complaint about the product? And then we're also always reviewing what is the relative value of that product if we renew it back in the marketplace. As you know, this kind of crazy supply chain period that we're experiencing, the value of the renewed products has increased as demand has increased and supply is diminished in the marketplace.
Yep, exactly.
So for every, and it's unfortunate, that the new product side is really being impacted. But I think it's helping our clients understand the value of their refurbished and remanufactured products back into the marketplace. And, at the end of the day, not everything has to have a bunch of money invested into it. A lot of the products that we touch are what we call best effort programs, meaning that we know a certain percentage of the products will never be recovered, right? They're damaged, they're missing parts, but then we can harvest good things from there to repair and refurbish other products. And then we can essentially, create a program that's, efficient and cost effective, even with lower MSRP products.
Yeah. And you bring up some good points. I mean, look, if, just taking this back to the brand, like if you're selling direct to consumer, well, you own that channel, you can probably say, okay, return these, cut the cord on these, and you can just look at the dollars. But you bring up a good point about the data. And then of course, if you're working with a large retailer, they're just going to send it all back. So it's really going to depend on your channels, and what you've negotiated in those channels. And then I guess when it comes back, if it's coming back from a large retailer, maybe at the point at ARC, from there, you can decide, okay, well, it had to come back, but we're not going to repair, these 15 SKUs, but we will the rest. And that can just be determined, contractually with the companies that you're working with. So talk about the difference between, so back in the day, at New Era, we used to do these repairs ourselves. And then of course we've gone through this reverse logistics process. And the data collection is fantastic. Obviously a lot more data is being collected. Things are, serialed, and then now we can, bring each return back to the original transaction for the most part. Talk about the difference of, when you work with customers, how a rookie might handle returns, and then how do you guys handle it? What, just kind of specifically and quickly, like what steps and improvements are added, and we already kind of talked about the extra data, but any other advantages that, come about the process, when someone's working with you?
Sure. Yeah. And I'm a person that loves a good sports analogy, and, my Red Sox did surprise me and win over the Rays last night. So
yep.
Baseball, analogies work pretty well when you think about returns management maturity. So if you think about like a maturity curve and apply it back to, baseball, when most companies start out kind of that rookie or Cape Cod league, and the ultimate goal, figuring out how to get to the big show, right? Or even be, an all-star. What we found is, the typical rookie company has almost a universal challenge to overcome. There's a lack of ownership for the returns process. I see this over and over again. Startups and even some established companies experiencing really fast growth of their product focus every brain cell internally on developing, building, and delivering that exceptional product to market. But they forget that 10% of everything they sell is going to be returned. And so there's no clear owner for returns, and therefore returns just start to clog up. They're underserved, and they really become this weight on the P&L. And so this lack of documented processes and clear ownership, ultimately really impacts the customer crediting. And that's usually where ARC starts with a rookie, is cleaning up that crediting process. Because when you insert, that receiving process and crediting process by kind of a vetted third party, then, essentially ARC is like Switzerland, right? We're just committed to providing good, accurate data So our clients can process returns efficiently and only credit what is really returned. Now, I can safely say that about 1% of everything ARC receives in from a mass retailer for our clients isn't their product. ARC, provides the data that's necessary for these brands to provide the right credit amount. And if you think about it, if you want to put that in perspective of how big of a number that could be, one of our clients shipped 40 million units in the U.S. last year. Use simple math, that's 4 million units will be returned. And if just 1% of those is wrong, that's 40,000 units that belong to another brand. So returns crediting, outside of, other data that can be provided, is really the first step in making sure somebody starts to go along that maturity curve.
Yeah, it's such a funny example. We've seen so many crazy things show up in our warehouse. And sometimes we just crack up. We're like, how did that end up in, one of our returns? But you're absolutely right. Some of these lovely retailers will somehow, those mixes happen, but that's such a good example. And not everybody would notice it unless you're out in the warehouse. Sometimes these things don't even come up, right? I mean, the warehouse team may not even bring it up because it's just, they're used to seeing it, but it's very sporadic. But yeah, it's happening. It's definitely out there, and I've seen it plenty of times. Okay. Tell us about, as far as reverse logistics goes, when we were doing it ourselves, we just call them, scratch dent would be one category. So that would be, hey, the product works great, but it's got a ding on it. We try to prevent those by coming back. Customer service would maybe provide a discount or something like that. But obviously some customers just don't want it. And then you're going to have that back and we'll test it, and it works great. So you sell that as a scratch dent. And those can be difficult sometimes because you can't take pictures of every different product, and the customer can sometimes have issues not knowing where the scratch and dent is. So that's a challenge in and of itself. But I think you guys have a few different ways to disposition the product. So why don't you kind of take us through the various ways that these will be eventually labeled?
Yeah, you did a great job outlining the fact, the challenge of returns, right? Telling the story of that renewed product. Yeah, and part of the confusion, right, is just the number of terms that get applied to that product: remanufactured, refurbished, reconditioned, reprocessed. And the irony is really only one of those terms has a true ANSI definition, being, with remanufactured. But the wonderful thing is that Apple exists in this world, right? Apple helped people understand that if your product malfunctions during its warranty, you don't get a new item, you get a factory certified refurbished product.
Yep.
So therefore, consumers understood, this didn't come off a line brand new, but it would get touched. 100% of the products got touched again and got retested and graded. And so they become more comfortable with refurbished and remanufactured products. They can see the cost savings and the benefit. It helps certain brands, get new customers into the fold who couldn't maybe afford, the brand new product, but they get welcomed into the family of that brand by buying the remanufactured. So we really look at creating differentiation across the renewed goods based on the cosmetics of the item. So, again, most programs are best effort that we work with. So if you think about the microwave that you brought, we were talking about earlier, we might not have a new microwave hood to put on a unit. So those dents or scratches, that it came in with will remain with the product. But every product, is tested and certified to the same standard. So the only difference ends up being that cosmetic condition. And you were smart early on, right? Your business focused on, hey, we'll have this like high grade remanufactured good and a scratch and dent good. Some of our clients only have one cosmetic grade, right? An A, right? It's like new standard. They'll call it grade A or remanufactured or factory certified. I look at it in terms of where would my wife let me put this in our home, right? And grade A, she's going to let me put that on the counter. She'll be fine. Or I can send it off as a gift and not feel like I was being a cheapskate. All good. For others, though, like you, right, when you're talking about your scratch and dent program, we have those differentiation. We'll have a grade B, like a scratch and dent, even all the way down to like a grade C, which I kind of call the ugly garage use only model. But everything goes through this pedantic set of cosmetic criteria that we review with our clients, because they get to sign off on how their brand gets represented in any new sales channel. And again, that goes back to, for you, two varieties of that is fine. For others, they only allow one standard.
Yeah. And then, but what does that mean though, as far as like, what's the best label to have on a product? So for example, if you want to sell it through Amazon or eBay, is remanufactured better than reconditioned or refurbished? I don't know. Can I pin you down on like, what do we, if in a perfect world, what would we want that product to be called?
So, the names that you mentioned between Amazons and eBays and stuff, those direct-to-consumer channels, Amazon put out their Amazon Renewed program, which has a set of guidelines in order to sell it on there. So they call it Renewed. eBay has their now, factory certified refurbished program. The challenge really is based on industry. If you were to go to talk to GE Medical, who sells $1 billion of remanufactured, product a year, well, in that world, it's called reprocessed. So it gets a bit nuanced. I'm a big fan of factory certified if the partner is certified by the brand owner, or reconditioned works really well in the outdoor power equipment and handheld outdoor power equipment power generation space. It's a term people latch onto, but refurbished people understand because of Apple and things like that. Typically, if you're going to put it on a consumer product or a piece of IT or CE equipment, people get it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, let's go into kind of like root cause analysis. So that was a big value point. Remember, again, people coming in, and if they're just looking at dollars and cents, they're looking at it one way. Hey, I got this return glut. I got to figure out what to do and resell these. But then they realize, whoa, okay, I can get all this data. We can improve our products. That can go down the chain, even all the way back to the factories. And, there can be this kind of loop of improvement over time. So talk to us kind of about, maybe an example of root cause analysis and a success story.
Sure. If you think in terms of, I said it earlier, right, that customer returns journey, for us, when we think through root cause analysis, the optimal way is connecting what a call center hears to a product that is actually returned. Because that helps us really map out that returns journey. So, we have programs today where we get access to the original customer complaint or reason for return connected at a serial number level. So when that serial number is received at ARC, our ERP system, Enterprise Resource Planning System, that operates our whole system, it'll tell the operator what specific complaint existed. So then we can perform all the standard testing, but we can also investigate to that specific complaint. Especially anything that is, safety or performance related. So think about, a complaint that says it shocked me, or, like in a blender, right? It didn't crush the ice well, or something like that. Those can then be investigated further. And I think through a couple different scenarios. One really just happened just in mid this year, and it was really some root cause that helped on the sales channel side, on the sales development side of the equation. So there was a brand of microwave. It's actually a Sharp microwave, and I'm not going to say anything despairing. So I have no problem with Sharp hearing their name. But we identified that within one model there was consistently ones where the internal light would not turn on when you opened the door. And what we had finally identified was there was actually a sensor that had been removed from certain versions of the unit. It took a little while. We had to escalate up through Sharp, and they were kind enough to report back what the date code was when they decided to make that change. And the manufacturing world better than I do. It probably saved them 18 cents a unit, but you compound that across microwaves, which can have a same model life cycle of 3 or 4 years. That's a lot of savings, just by removing that little sensor. So light would come on when the food was being cooked, but would not come on when the door was open. But what it allowed us to do was communicate to our sales channel the fact that certain models, when they would put out sales sheets on the model, to not mention the fact that there should be a light. And we made sure that we modify the refurbished version of the manual to not reflect that a light would show up when the door was open. So, you can do some root cause. There's other scenarios as well, where, if there's a customer reported issue related to, the cooling effect within a category, a compact refrigerator. We were able to identify what was truly causing the issue. work with their overseas manufacturer and get a corrective action in place and a real-time change in the sourced temp probe that allowed that new production to not be impacted, and then also create a new rework instruction that anytime that model came in within a certain date code, we just replace that part automatically. So it's amazing the power of information.
Yeah, that is such a. I mean, I've seen it, because obviously we're working together and we've seen, issues identified in products and sometimes they're really sporadic and rarely happen, but without consistently having that product repaired, we would never be able to figure it out. Right. But you guys having the expertise and tons of big sample size, you're able to get to the bottom of it. So that's a good example, kind of along the way when say, a company starting a new relationship with you, how should they think about kind of grading the relationship or KPIs that they should be following, or maybe they're just KPIs overall for returns? I mean, what stands out on your mind, and kind of what would you advise brands use on KPIs? And it could even be KPIs for the relationship between you and the brand. Just want to get a sense for like what measurements you think are important.
Yeah, for each customer interaction can be a bit unique, right? When you're talking metrics that are important, but as long as they're metrics that matter to that business, all the stakeholders can understand them, and they can really create action plans to drive improvement, then they're the right ones. But really without hesitation, I would say, off the top of my head, I can probably come up with 3 that I'd recommend. The first one being that average time to credit. So, what is that total life cycle, hours, days, weeks, whatever it is, from the time a return is requested until the credit is actually applied to the customer account. Now there's a bunch of impacts to that life cycle, right? That, and only some can be controlled. You can't control when the end user actually brings it and ships it off. You can't, account for weather delays for FedEx or UPS, et cetera. But, as a solution partner, my clients count on me to move product from my dock, get into my ERP system as fast as possible. That way they can credit their customers quickly. So I would say that's number one, measure that average time to credit. Number 2, measure your no fault found rate. What percentage of process units really had no functional fault. So it's important that way you can negotiate with mass retailers sometimes is a discussion point, right? Because if a return can be avoided and that product retained in the store, even as an open box item at a reduced sale price, that's the best possible diversion. But if returns are inevitable, right, then knowing the percentage of product that is fully functional at time of return can help us work collaboratively to make decisions on, okay, if we know our forecast is we're going to sell 100,000 of these next year, 10,000 are going to come back, and guess what? 60% of those are going to be no fault found, whatever number, right? We can make sales channel decisions together based on that knowledge. And then really, I'd say the third one, if I was going to think through, is average age of finished goods. So, how long are those renewed items sitting in a warehouse before finding a new home? At the end of the day, that's kind of a cash cycle discussion, right? Because if your company's using those renewed items to replace a defective product for a consumer, right, a warranty obligation, it may not be as relevant. But if you're selling them, and really trying to recover cash that way, then aging inventory, is usually a sign that, either the product isn't getting the same attention from the sales team, the pricing strategy is wrong, or the sales channel itself doesn't support the volume of the product that's going through.
Those are really, really interesting. I can tell you number 3 is something we have to work on, but you and I have talked about that briefly. But no fault found rate, that's fascinating. I really like that one. I'm gonna have to dig into that. I guess for larger appliances, it's tough because there's oftentimes with all the shipping, a ding can happen, even if it didn't happen at the main location, right? It comes back and now it's got a ding, and so that's a problem. But for smaller products that can be packaged and shipped, I could definitely see that being valuable, and even with our larger ones. So, definitely good insight there. That's one for me to dig into. So let's kind of wrap it up a bit here with what are the best sales channels. Now, I think you and I briefly spoke, and then you talked about it earlier. Obviously you got eBay, Amazon, and then if companies can sell direct, you got their direct channel. Is there another larger one maybe a bulk channel or something that comes into play often? Or, how should people think about the best channels to then sell into?
So there are some great, value retailers out in the marketplace today. One publicly traded, Ollie's bargain outlet, based out of Pennsylvania, really more East Coast centric with 3 distribution centers now between Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Texas. They're north of 400 stores. They're really good if the original MSRP of that product was, in some cases, it could be as high as $500. But their sweet spot is original MSRP of around 100 or so. They have great sales velocity and a really good appetite for product. And then there's others. A lot of them are on the East Coast, which is very interesting. Variety wholesalers. More central U.S. is also a company called Bargain Hunters. They're very much value retailers, brick and mortar. Not a big play online. So if you're trying to keep product from showing up online again, those are good options. On the West Coast, you have like discount grocers, and you've got some players up in Canada as well. So if you want to move your product out of the U.S., at the end of the day, you're going to get your best dollar, by being direct back to the consumer. And I always say everybody wants to be direct to the consumer until they don't, because it's a difficult space, and it very well that selling to end users directly poses its own unique challenges. And where that really works, and we talk about a lot internally, is creating differentiation across grades, driving your channels, right? So, I think one of the best examples of that is KitchenAid. They have a grade A product, and all is sold through KitchenAid certified refurbished author. It's managed by them. It's their own website. So it's got great descriptions, and people can buy with confidence. You do it as well on your website as well with your remanufactured product. That's a great experience. But if you have a grade B, like a scratch and dent, it's a different consumer. And I think it needs to live separately. For us, we've been working very diligently in this fiscal year to create a system that allows a consumer, through some middleware we've developed, to see the exact product they would buy. And the challenge you were talking about earlier, right? A scratch to one person is nothing to another.
Yep.
But our system will do some auto listing at a serial number level, and that consumer is going to be able to say, oh, wow, I'm putting this, and it's going to be up against a wall, so the left side doesn't matter. So this unit only has a big scratch on the left side. I don't care. I'm saving 25 extra % or whatever it is by having that big scratch, and I'll never see it. And so that's where the differentiation really comes in. And then not so much for the brand owners like you, for retailers who don't have an obligation to the brand and are willing to put out like a C grade product because it's not their brand. Those are really meant for more of a liquidation channel. So if you can go direct to consumer on your highest grade, go either with a value retailer, on your B grade or even some of your grade A, or, direct to consumer with all the imaging at a serial number level, and then liquidation on that C channel.
Awesome. That's super detailed, gives us a path. I think right down the street, there's a place called Dave's Appliance. I don't know if you know who these guys are. I guess they have one spot on the East Coast, and then they opened one up in Huntington, and it's all scratch and dent. And so
nice.
There's plenty of, there's a whole other industry here that we just got to discover and do some little bit of business development and get to know these folks for any of us brands that are in need of these extra channels. And I took a walk through, and it's like, really high-end refrigerators, some of the best brands that you would want in your kitchen, really high-end brands. And then of course, highly discounted because they're all scratch dent. So, and
you're seeing that even from some of the retailers. Best Buy, I think, has 11 or 12 Best Buy outlets now across the country. And, super low overhead, and it's all scratch and dent majors, and then things like TVs and such that you might have scratch screen, that type of stuff. But big discounts, and they're able to move them in volume.
Cool. Well, listen, Paul, this was fantastic, and thanks for really actionable details. I really like the KPIs. And then of course the sales channels, because I think we're all stuck on the eBay, Amazon direct, but then, you got a couple of other nuggets there that we can dig into. Before I let you go, what's next with ARC? What do you guys, what are your plans for the future, and what kind of change is happening?
Well, we wish we could become a sexy unicorn of some sort, but we are slowly evolving into a data and analytics company, right? So, we've got, pretty people heavy processes. but those processes are what allow us to secure data that other returns enabled companies can't provide. So we'll just continue to develop better, faster, and I think most importantly, smarter ways to manage the chaos that is returns, and then focus on helping our clients reduce those returns, improve their products, understand the consumers better. And then really from a tactical standpoint, the next big step for ARC is that classic go west young man scenario. We serve 70% of the U.S. population really well, but as logistics costs are crazy right now. So we've got to get a West Coast facility opened, in the next 6 to 12 months to really serve our clients better. So it's fun. Again, day one mentality. I love what we do. We've got really good, committed people. And so it's just a lot of fun to be in this space.
Cool. And before I let you go, how can people contact you, find out more about you and ARC?
Sure. So the current website is about to get relaunched. So the current one is just arcaugusta.com. But soon americasreman.com will be live in about another week. So don't mind the ugly legacy one, and look forward to the better looking one. And then anybody can also reach me, Paul.Adamson at arcaugusta.com. So arcaugusta.com. And happy to talk to anybody. Even if you just need to get some questions answered, you're not looking to outsource, I have no issues with just trying to point you in the right direction. It's a small world, so happy to help.
Cool. Well, thanks again, Paul, for being on the Page One podcast. We'll talk soon, I'm sure.
Thank you, Luke. Take care.